And greetings, Earthlings. We're looking at the local yellow dwarf here, otherwise known as the Sun, in 304 angstroms. We see some filaments here in the southeast, otherwise low levels of solar activity. Let's zoom in on the north first. We're looking at 9.5 hours on November 20th. There's that filament. Again, we're looking at 9.5 hours from 0 hour until 9:30 UT. Here's a colorized magnetogram view, and we don't see very much by way of organized fields. No sunspots. The only active region is this plage, formerly sunspot 2752, now breaking up in magnetic complexity. No Earth-facing coronal mass ejections. And before we get into more data, let's talk about this article on Science Alert. It's about X17, a possible new force of nature, a new boson. And if the discovery is confirmed, not only could learning more about X7 help us better understand the forces that govern our universe, it could also help scientists solve the dark matter problem once and for all. And a problem it is, since there is none. Anyway, this interesting article is generated because of some new interesting science regarding the isotopic decay of beryllium. And it's called X17 because it's based on 17 mega electron volts, about 33 times out of an electron. And anyway, we'll leave links to the article, as it will be all over Science News. Perhaps Eugene Bagashov, maybe we'll give you a ring on Skype, see if we can get you on to talk about X17. Let's move on and talk about X-rays to find the X-ray flux totally flatlined. Now, NASA is predicting, actually this is NOAA, Space Weather Prediction Center, predicting a coronal hole wind stream to impact today, anticipating a density spike, and then later in the day, a velocity spike as the density drops back down. So that's something to look at throughout the day on the solar wind. And here is the current solar wind conditions. We're looking at the last 24 here. We did see a recent shift in the phi angle, which caused some magnetic abnormalities in the magnetosphere and some induced current. But no big deal, really. Current phi angle at 219, perhaps hinting at a magnetic connection to a coronal hole, but I doubt it. Solar wind density, 3.1 protons per cubic centimeter. Solar wind speed, 329 kilometers a second. There's the data from ACE, the slightly better spacecraft in terms of shielding from cosmic rays. There's that density spike we were talking about in the magnetosphere movie. Let me rock that back real quick and let it play through. That one coming in at just around 7 o'clock UT. And we'll let the 4 hours of data play. I know we make the videos early, folks. Don't fall asleep. There's lots of stuff to cover. And thanks to everybody who's subscribed, become a patron, tuned into the videos daily, etc. We appreciate your support. There's that induced current spike coming in right around the same time there, right around 7 o'clock UT. Looking at geospace delta B, otherwise known as changes in the Earth's B field. The field that goes through the magnet. And we're just going to let that play as it refreshed on its own. There you can see that induced current showing right around 7 UT. If you want to know what's in the coffee, by the way, it's organic coffee, coconut oil, cayenne pepper, cinnamon, cocoa powder, and a splash of milk for instant drinkability. 10.7 centimeter radial flux back down to 69. Right at the bottom of this orange line we've drawn in, showing you the 70 solar flux units level. of the 10.7 centimeter radial flux. A measurement of the sun's outer corona. GOES magnetometer is looking pretty smooth, as we are solidly in the North Pole oriented portion of the sheet shown here in green. That's the current sheet, the heliospheric current sheet. Nothing too exciting there, expecting to be here for at least the next 24 hours. There's the last image. Not a lot going on in the sun. Now, we've been at KP0 for a longer period throughout the past 3 days than we've been at KP1. Very low levels of magnetic power in the Earth's magnetosphere, let's say. So this is a cosmic ray situation, folks. So let's go through and look. Now, we've left links to the Network of Cosmic Ray Stations link, so you can check that out yourself. Don't take our word for it. Monitor the data yourself. And please refute me if I'm incorrect. There's the Apatity Neutron Monitor, as well as Barentsburg. And actually, we do see the highest levels coming in here just recently in the past couple hours. However, the levels were much higher back on October 23rd. And Barentsburg showing the same scenario. Here's the Athens Neutron Monitor. Highest levels measured there in the past 30 were on the 30th of October. Next, we'll look at Mexico City. There's the Cosmic Ray Monitor there. Nothing too exciting going on at Mexico City. Moscow still not returning data. Here's Oulu, Finland. I would like to comment, a couple days ago, we did see some really odd spikes in the Antarctican monitors. Oulu is at a pretty nominal range here. Here's DOMC Antarctica, which is showing some missing data as well as some significant spikes. And there's DOMB Antarctica, showing actually one of the largest spikes on the entire graph there. Anyway, there's that data. Moving on. And again, we did leave links to the Network of Cosmic Ray Stations link, so you can monitor these things yourself. Here's the GOES electron flux, and it's looking quite weak and smooth. Keep in mind these N's and M's are noon and midnight time for the GOES 14 and 15 respectively. Relativistic electrons are in a moderate range, nothing to write home about there. Here's the ionosphere layer. And man, oh man, we've got quite a lot of stories to cover yet. Ionosphere is looking a little anomalously charged on the night side and a little discharged on the day side. A little bit anomalous in the ionosphere, folks. Here's the latest image. That one coming in at 9:45. Again, looking a little anomalously charged up, especially in the southern hemisphere on the nighttime side. We did see some 6+ magnitude earthquakes in the past 24 hours. Let's go over everything over a 4. The first on the list coming in at 11:30, about 22 hours before we made this video. It's 4:54 a.m. Do you know where your earthquakes are? 4.4 at the East Pacific Rise is the first coming in at 11:30 UT yesterday. That one west of Central America. Let's blast through the list. We see a 4.6 in Japan at 12:03, a 4.3 at Indonesia. That one less than an hour later, followed by a 5.3 at Nepal, that one at 13:30 UT. Next we see 4.9 northwest of Australia, followed by a 4.5 at Peru. I still think it's likely to see a large earthquake in western South America. Moving up the list, we see at 22:26 UT late last night, it's a 4.6 magnitude in the Aleutian Islands there, southwest of mainland Alaska. One of the larger quakes of the past 24 is this 5.8 at Argentina. Let's hope that one didn't cause too much damage or fall in a populated area. Excuse me. Here's a 4.8 at Indonesia. That one coming in at 5 after midnight UT. Next on the list, 4.8 at India. That one at 337 UT, a 4.4 in Alaska, that one way out in the Aleutian chain. We did see an uptick in volcanic activity there. Shishaldin Volcano, we'll get to it in a minute. 6.3 at Mexico, that's the biggest quake of the past 24, I think. Let's check the location of that one. Looks like it occurred off the coast. Let's hope no tsunamis kicked up. Let's take a look. And it's not even on the list at tsunami.gov, which is reporting no tsunami warning, advisory, watch, or threat. And back to the list we go. Next we see a deep quake. That's extreme depth at a pretty high magnitude there. 486 kilometers depth at a 6.3 magnitude. Let's take a look at that location. This one in between Kamchatka and mainland Russia. And the timing of that quake was at 8:26, right as we were doing show prep. And that's the last on the list. Let's move on to more data. By the way, here's Shishaldin Volcano, located in the Aleutian chain. And if you're wondering, windy.com does have webcams. So if you just look at your favorite location, wherever you want to look, there may be a webcam. And here's some images from just 8 hours ago, I think. Anyway, check it out at windy.com. They got a great mobile app also. Anyway, here's where pressure cells are located. If you want to animate the map, go to windy.com and do it yourself because we've got too much stuff to cover and we're just moving on to the volcano rundown. Starting out with Mount Aso, which is producing a 5,000-foot ash plume. Sakurajima is still exploding, producing a 6,000-foot ash plume there. Please don't pole vault Sakurajima. Mount Ibu, volcanic ash on satellite imagery, showing an ash plume as it explodes and produces a 6,000-foot plume. Sanjiang-api exploding as well, 8,000-foot ash plume there. Mount Takono exploding, 6,000-foot plume there. Shishaldin, some increased seismic activity, strong surface temperatures showing up in satellite images, as well as some lava flows or lahars, etc. So continued uptick at Shishaldin. Popocatépetl still exploding, producing a 19,000-foot ash plume, as well as some volcano tectonic earthquakes. And a moderate explosion at 509. Revenador exploding also, producing a 15,000-foot ash plume. Also Sabancaya exploding, 24,000-foot plume there. Nevados de Chilean also exploding, producing a 13,000-foot ash plume. Please don't Fosbury flop over Nevados de Chilean. Now we talked yesterday about the sulfur cycle, something very much not understood by climatologists, which is largely people that don't seem to understand atmospheric physics getting published in scientific papers. In any case, the sulfur cycle of our planet is not largely understood. It is important in climate forcing, as it causes the planet to cool down. Another volcanic forcing factor, the sulfur cycle. The good news is, folks, is that sulfur is good for plant growth. So you got to always give up something to get something else. So as the planet gets colder, we're expecting higher crop yields. That's a good thing. And for that, we're delighted. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. And there's where it'll be in 1 week. And I'm not going to keep clicking the button because it's going to cause me to smash something, possibly driving a nail through a central processing unit, and we don't want to do that. Let's talk about Europa. Now, it's been long thought that Europa had water because of all those cracks you can see obviously on the surface there. And apparently somebody has noticed the spectra by checking out the vapor plumes that are blasting into space. Let's play a clip from the video and not get demonetized as a result, because it'll be less than 8 seconds. So we're photoionized water.
And the H2O molecules give off a distinctive infrared glow.
So that's what's going on. It's fairly obvious now that there is indeed water there. People think there's, of course, life in an ocean there, and I'm not going to comment on it. And by the way, if you're wondering why I never cover exoplanets, there's a reason for it, and I'm not going to get into it today because there's too much other stuff to cover. Now, let's talk about somebody else thinking that there's life on Mars. It's Dr. Rosimer from Ohio University. Now, he's thinking he's seeing insects, and let me read a quote. there has been and still is life on Mars. So this guy's going one step further, I should say. As the rover goes farther and doesn't find any life, this guy seems to think there's life there. Now, maybe, is that a cicada? It could be a cicada. Please leave a comment if you think that that's an insect. Personally, I don't really have any idea, but I find it to be a ridiculous idea to take these photographs, which look like rocks, and attribute them to life forms. I think it's nonsense. What do you think? Please leave a comment. Here's where stuff is above my head. Check out in-the-sky.org if you want to build a sky map for yourself. It looks like Cygnus is about to rise again, folks. And we've already made it to the That is Censored and That is a Sinkhole section, where we encourage our users to understand the distinction between their and a hole in the ground. And we talk about whatever we want, vulgarity free. Let's talk about the list of nearest stars and brown dwarfs. We left a link to this as well. Today we're going to talk about Lalande 21185. Lalande 21185, another catchy name. It's a very close red dwarf. It's one of the, I believe it's like the 5th closest star to our local yellow dwarf system here. It's very dim. It's only visible through a telescope. It's only at 8.31 light years away. It is another star with a high proper motion, which is not that surprising considering it's so close. We've left links to the article here on Wiki about Lalande 21185. Let's move on to something a little farther away, the Phoenix Cluster. Now, we've left this link also to the Chandra X-ray Observatory in the description. This thing is located at, it's believed to be 5.7 billion light years from Earth. And let's just say it's an interesting scenario going on in the Phoenix Cluster. Let's talk about why we're talking about it now. It's not understood exactly how black hole jets interact with their local galactic medium, as some data seems to show that the jets fuel star formation, while most of the data indicates that the jets prevent star formation. Now, it's fairly widely accepted that stars only form when it's not too hot. It has to be just the right temperature, which is why we don't see star formation right around the relativistic jets, especially from supermassive black holes. And instead we see the plasma blasting out in a cone shape out of the jets, where it starts to rotate at a very great distance from the galactic core. The jets from this central black hole, and I say that in quotes, the central black hole, they appear to be aiding in the formation of stars, which is not a normal thing in cosmology. And we won't mention about the calculation of things like black hole and galactic masses, other than to say that it's not good science. But we did leave links to the article here from Cosmos magazine, as every cosmology breakthrough is important. Now, the team was led by Michael McDonald from MIT. And did you know that Michael McDonald works at MIT? Now, I thought he was touring with the Doobie Brothers, for their 50th anniversary, possible induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but apparently he also works at MIT. So this guy is really a multitasker if I ever heard of one. He says it's compelling evidence for a unique galaxy cluster where stars are forming at a furious rate. Hundreds of times more stars being formed than in the Milky Way galaxy, allegedly. And it's apparently linked to a less effective black hole in its center. The jets appear to be aiding in the formation of stars instead of preventing it. Thanks, Michael McDonald. By the way, if you want to see where they're touring, check out michaelmcdonald.com. And yet another reason to visit the Lehigh Valley. Wow, what a great tourist location. You want to go see the Doobies play at the PPL Center? I certainly don't, because I hate that crap. A lot of terrible music came out in the late 70s and early 80s. But hey, we've linked to the article anyway, in case you want to go check out Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees, the Doobie Brothers. Apparently the Doobies let Michael back in after they kicked him out in the late 70s or early 80s. Please leave a comment if you know about the yacht rock. And let's talk about yacht rock. Are you familiar with the smooth, terrible music that came out in the mid to late 70s and through the mid 80s? Well, let's play a clip from this incredible YouTube series, Yacht Rock. Watch the whole thing. You will laugh, as it contains a whole bunch of real rock and roll history.
Maybe you guys like what I have so far?
Here's a parody of Michael McDonald.
Get home and cool creams and mistress. You got a cool spell on me.
It's good times. It's got a whole bunch of rock and roll history. I mean, Michael Jackson, Van Halen's mentioned, Peter Cetera, all kinds of stuff. Check out Yacht Rock in HD on YouTube. One of the most hilarious YouTube series ever made. Here's where lightning's coming down. And looks like we got a pile of lightning in the North Atlantic. Please don't be on a boat with hunks like Marky Mark and George Clooney out there, as it could be the perfect storm. Get below decks. Don't be struck. Here's a U.S. Doppler radar, and we see more snow falling in North Dakota and Montana. And I really got to get an afternoon video going here where I look at the satellite images, as like half of the country is covered in snow right now, including northern Pennsylvania. I've seen it myself. Follow me on Instagram, instagram.com/smAsho, for regular oddities and weather phenomenon and other stuff that you won't see on places like YouTube or BitChute. We try to keep some content exclusive, folks. And let's move on. It's the U.S. water vapor. It's the... Anyway, there's a U.S. water vapor map. And that's what's going on. I do see a convergence. Let's take a look. It's an edgy view of the area where Oregon and Washington and Idaho form a three-way border. I see a bunch of protons there shown up as massive dry air. If you think low-pressure systems run the atmosphere, well, think again, as the more massive air has its way pushing around all that water vapor, which is less massive than the dry air. I don't know if you were aware, but it's true, folks. It's true, to quote Kurt Angle. Here are the jet streams of the Western world. And let's rotate this around to the Eastern world. There are the jet streams in the East. And from the way things look down there in Australia, we're going to be hearing reports of sudden ocean warming in between Australia and Antarctica. Should be interesting. So please press like and subscribe if you enjoy the content on YouTube. And perhaps become a patron. Check out patreon.com/smAshomash. Get our breaking news updates first. And thanks to all the viewers, friends, and foes who watch the videos. And stay tuned for multiple bonus features, folks. Starting out with 171 angstroms view of the local yellow dwarf. That active region is breaking down. There is a little magnetic complexity right here north of the equator. Nothing too exciting going on there. Let's talk about some more stuff. Scientists find evidence of missing neutron star. Now, classical astronomy is going to tell you that when a supernova happens, the star is just gone. Stars explode, they collapse, they vanish, they become black dwarfs, yada, yada, yada. They gravitationally collapse on themselves. The most famous supernova ever, supernova 1987A, appears to be revealing its neutron star. The moral of the story is that all stars, whether they're galactic cores or whether they're just stars, they all nova, they're all variable, and they're all dependent on the amount of dust, gas, and electric current located around them, or you could say plasma filaments, whatever you want to say. It's not really particularly surprising to people that understand that these things don't gravitationally collapse, because the implications of that are pretty vast on the rest of the universe. But there's a view of supernova remnant 1987A, casting more light on the fact that these things don't just vanish and go out of existence. There's something inside of these supernova remnants that is illuminating them and making them look so bright and cool. Those things are called stars. To the article. Let's talk about plutocracy. Now, plutocracy is the traditional form of government on our planet. When you were living in a monarchy, that's a type of
plutocracy.
When the Federal Reserve changes interest rates, you're living in a
plutocracy.
When a billionaire is president, you're living in a
plutocracy.
When the Chinese Communist Party runs the oligarchy known as China, you're living in a
plutocracy.
Hong Kong wants to be part of a democracy and not a
plutocracy.
All right, enough of that. Stocks are slated to be lower today as China threatens retaliation since the U.S. Senate late yesterday at 6 p.m. passed a bill backing up the Hong Kong protesters. Now, personally, I would get the hell out of Hong Kong before the crackdown occurs, but that's because I have a very low level of political efficacy. Now, it's gotten high enough for me to actually cast votes. But alas, you are still living in a plutocracy where massive amounts of funds, trillions of dollars, are utterly misallocated to do stupid things, such as quell Hong Kong protests. Now, Hong Kong doesn't want to be ruled by communists. The system of one government, two systems is in danger of breaking down. Let's hope it doesn't, as those people in Hong Kong are somewhat free, despite technically being under Chinese rule. Expect today's stock market to be lower as a result. Democrats that don't understand inflation or the economy. They only understand padding their own bottom line. So check out cnbc.com/markets. Let's take a quick look at crypto. We're going to look at Bitcoin and Ethereum real quick. Here's Bitcoin as reported by the Coinbase exchange, which is actually the exchange I use. Bitcoin not up on the bad news from China. Let's check Ethereum. And here's the one-year chart of Ethereum as reported by Coinbase. Also not up on the bad news out of China. Also, and unbelievably, silver is at $17.12 per ounce, barely up from the support level when it reached all the way down to 1667 or so. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve and how it should be abolished. If you think you live in a capitalist economy, well, think again. That ended in 1913 on December 23rd, when Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. This ensures that the banking system and the government system can prop each other up with a series of bad ideas like legal tender laws, where you can't legally demand payment in silver or gold, or even cryptocurrency for that matter, since legal tender laws ensure that U.S. Federal Reserve notes are good for all debts, public and private. Well, what does that mean? That means that everybody is subjected to inflation, especially the poor, because the poor have the least ability to invest and rely on things like savings and small amounts of money to pay for things. Plutocrats don't care about inflation because they have so much money it doesn't affect their bottom line, and they're able to invest in capital markets in ways that cause the inflation to not hurt them anyway. In other words, if your investments are returning less than 3%, well, you're losing money just simply due to inflation. Now, in order to have capitalism, you need to have free markets controlling the price of things. When it comes to interest rates, the price of interest rates, the price of a loan is the interest rate. Therefore, the Federal Reserve is engaged in price fixing. Now, if the Congress just determined that interest rates are prices, that would defang the Federal Reserve overnight, and it would create actual markets in terms of lending. The largest block of business in the world is the interest on international and corporate loans. And if there was a free market on that, smaller banks would be able to compete. But because of the way the system, just read The Creature of Jekyll Island and read this article, as it's a great article. And it talks about the history of the Fed, why it should be abolished, etc. End the Fed. Tell your local congressperson to make interest rates a price. Wouldn't you be angry if all the local grocers fixed the price on apples or eggs or milk or anything else? Well, I'm sure you would. It's illegal. However, price fixing of interest rates is the norm. All banks must do it. All banks must participate, or they can't compete with the big banks. And the FDIC helps to ensure that small banks can't compete with the big banks anyway. We won't get into it anymore other than to say that. End the Fed. Capitalism in the lending market is the way out. Let's talk about the latest Twitter outrage. Julia Roberts reportedly was suggested to play Harriet Tubman, and Twitter isn't having it. As social justice warriors, let's do a comparison here. All right, so now on the left we've got Harriet Tubman, and on the right we've got Julia Roberts. Now Julia Roberts is a well-established actress. I believe she has probably a good work ethic. You can trust her to show up on scene and remember her lines and all that stuff. There are some striking similarities between Ms. Roberts and Ms. Tubman here. As you can see, they both have two nostrils, one mouth, two eyes. Not sure if Ms. Tubman has hair or not, as I've never seen her without a bandana on her head. But hey, I think Julia Roberts can pull it off. Please leave a comment if you would prefer to see Julia Roberts take this role in blackface, or if perhaps you'd like to see a woman of color, or perhaps dress somebody up like a Smurf to operate the Underground Railroad. I don't really care because I think Hollywood is so full of nonsense. Although I've heard that it's a very well done script. So anyway, we've left links to the article and the whiteboard. If you'd like to draw a mustache on Ms. Tubman or Ms. Roberts, we're not racist. We'll gladly let you draw mustaches on both. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We are out of here. Remember to stare at the sun, and when you do so, don't drink it. If you drink, don't drive, and since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back, and that atherosclerosis absent from your veins.